Have you ever felt completely invisible to the person you love most? Like no matter what you say or do, they just can't seem to hear you. You're not alone, and more importantly, you're not imagining it. In every relationship, there are moments when emotional walls go up and connection breaks down, leaving both partners feeling confused, frustrated, and deeply lonely. The truth is, this isn't about a lack of love. It's about the invisible forces working beneath the surface of every human interaction. Donna and David Feinstein, pioneers in energy medicine and relationship psychology, reveal that our bodies and minds carry deeply wired patterns, shaped by past wounds, stress responses, and neurological differences that can make even the closest person feel miles away. When we feel threatened emotionally, our nervous systems go into survival mode, shutting down the very channels we need for intimacy. Understanding why this happens is the first step to breaking through. This speech is not just about the problem. It's about the path back to each other. Because real connection is always possible, even when it feels out of reach. When two people come together in love, they bring with them every experience they have ever lived through. Every moment of joy, every scar of pain, every lesson learned in the hardest of ways. What most people don't realize is that the human nervous system doesn't simply store these experiences as memories in the mind. It stores them deep within the body, within the cells, within the very way a person breathes, reacts, and responds to the world around them. So when your partner suddenly goes cold, distant, or completely unreachable, the first thing you need to understand is that what you are witnessing is not a choice. It is a response. A deeply automatic, deeply human response that has nothing to do with how much they love you. Science has shown us that when a person feels emotionally overwhelmed, the brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, fires up almost instantly. In that moment, rational thought takes a back seat. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for communication, empathy, and emotional regulation, becomes less accessible. What takes over instead is pure survival instinct. The person in front of you isn't choosing to shut you out. Their brain has essentially gone into emergency mode, doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect them from perceived danger. And the painful irony is that the danger it perceives is often the very intimacy you are offering. This is what makes emotional shutdown so confusing and so heartbreaking for the person on the outside. You reach out with love, and you are met with silence. You try to connect, and you are met with a wall. You speak, and it feels like your words are disappearing into empty air. From where you stand, it looks like indifference. It can even feel like rejection. But what is actually happening on the inside of that person is far from indifference. There is a storm going on. A quiet, invisible storm of overwhelm, fear, and a nervous system that has been pushed beyond its capacity to cope in that moment. It is also important to understand that emotional shutdown rarely happens because of one single conversation or one single argument. In most cases, it has been building quietly beneath the surface for much longer than either partner realizes. Small moments of feeling unheard, small moments of feeling criticized or unseen. These accumulate over time like pressure building inside a sealed container. And when that container finally reaches its limit, the system doesn't explode outward. For many people, it implodes. They go inward. They go silent. They disappear emotionally, because that is the only way their body knows how to release the pressure without causing destruction. What makes this even more layered is that not everyone shuts down in the same way or for the same reasons. Some people were taught from a very young age that expressing emotion was dangerous, that vulnerability led to punishment, ridicule, or abandonment. For those individuals, emotional shutdown is not just a nervous system response. It is a survival strategy that was mastered in childhood and carried quietly into every relationship that followed. They learned to protect themselves by disappearing emotionally before anyone else could hurt them. And even now, in a relationship filled with genuine love, that old strategy still activates, because the body remembers what the mind has long tried to forget. Understanding this does not make the pain of feeling shut out any easier to bear in the moment. It does not erase the loneliness of reaching for someone and finding nothing there. But it does begin to shift something fundamental in the way you see what is happening between you. Because once you stop reading their silence as a statement about your worth and start reading it as a signal about their pain, everything begins to look different. And that shift in perspective, as small as it may seem, is where the possibility of real reconnection begins to take root. But to truly find your way back to each other, there is something deeper that must first be understood. Something that lives not just in the nervous system, but in the unhealed places of the past that neither of you may even be fully aware of yet. There is a quiet truth that most people carry into their relationships without ever fully realizing it, that the person they become in moments of conflict, in moments of emotional pain, in moments of feeling unseen or unloved, is not entirely the adult standing in that room. In those charged, vulnerable moments, a much younger version of themselves shows up. A version that was shaped not by the present relationship, but by everything that happened long before this relationship even existed. The wounds of the past do not stay in the past. They travel with us, silently and invisibly, embedding themselves so deeply into who we are that we stop recognizing them as wounds at all. They simply become the way we see the world. Every single person who has ever experienced emotional pain, and that is every single person alive, develops ways of protecting themselves from feeling that pain again. A child who grew up in a home where love was unpredictable learns to brace themselves, to never fully relax into affection, because somewhere deep inside, they are always waiting for it to be taken away. A child who is shamed for crying learns to seal their emotions behind a wall so thick that even they eventually lose access to what they are truly feeling. A child who is abandoned, physically or emotionally, carries a terror of closeness that follows them into every room, every relationship, every moment of genuine intimacy. These are not personality flaws. These are survival blueprints. Written in childhood, carried into adulthood, and activated without warning in the relationships we value most. What makes this so devastating within a loving relationship is that the triggers are almost never obvious. It is rarely the big, dramatic moments that send someone spiraling back into their old wounds. More often, it is the smallest things. A certain tone of voice that echoes a parent's disapproval, a moment of silence that feels too familiar to an old abandonment, a look that carries just enough resemblance to a memory of rejection. These micro-triggers land on the nervous system like a match on dry wood. And suddenly, without either partner understanding why, the conversation has shifted. The present moment has been hijacked by the past. Two adults who love each other are no longer speaking to each other. They are speaking to the ghosts that live inside each other. The cruelest part of all of this is that it most often happens precisely when love is at its deepest. The more someone means to you, the more power they hold to reach those buried places inside you. Strangers cannot access your deepest wounds. Acquaintances cannot touch them. But the person you love with your whole heart, they have a kind of access that no one else does. And so the relationship that is supposed to be your greatest source of safety becomes, at times, the place where your oldest fears feel the most alive. This is not a sign that something is wrong with the relationship. It is a sign that something real and deep is being asked to heal. It is also worth understanding that these past wounds do not always announce themselves clearly. They disguise themselves as anger, as stubbornness, as emotional unavailability, as the need to control, as chronic people-pleasing. Your partner may not even have words for why they react the way they do in certain moments. They may feel genuinely confused by their own responses. They may pull away from you and not be able to explain it, even to themselves. This is because the wound lives below the level of conscious thought. It does not respond to logic. It does not care how many times you explain that you meant no harm. It simply feels what it feels, and it responds the way it was taught to respond, long before you ever entered the picture. This is perhaps one of the most important things a person can hold onto when the one they love seems to disappear behind a wall that makes no sense in the context of the present moment. The wall was not built for you. It was built long ago, by a person much smaller and much more vulnerable than the one standing before you now, in a world that felt far less safe than the one you are trying to build together. Seeing that, truly seeing it, does not mean excusing behavior that causes pain. It means understanding the architecture of that pain well enough to stop taking it personally, and to start asking a different question entirely. Because beneath every wall is a door, and beneath every wound is a longing. A longing to finally feel safe enough to let someone in. But finding that door, and knowing how to approach it gently, requires something beyond understanding the mind alone. It requires an awareness of something that moves through the body itself, something that most people have never been taught to see or feel, until now. There is a dimension to human connection that most people have never been taught to consider. One that operates completely beneath the surface of words, beneath the surface of behavior, and even beneath the surface of conscious thought. It is the dimension of energy. Not energy in the abstract, poetic sense of the word, but energy in a very real, very tangible sense, the living, moving, fluctuating field that surrounds and flows through every human body, shaping how we feel, how we communicate, and how deeply we are able to connect with the people around us. Donna Eden and David Feinstein have spent decades studying this dimension, and what they have found fundamentally changes the way we understand why two people who deeply love each other can still feel, at times, like they are speaking entirely different languages. Because the truth is, they often are, not in the words they use, but in the energetic frequency those words are being carried on. Every person carries within them a unique energetic signature. A rhythm, a frequency, a way that their internal energy moves and expresses itself in the world. This is not something a person chooses or controls consciously. It is as individual as a fingerprint, shaped by biology, by life experience, by emotional history, and by the deeply personal way each nervous system has learned to navigate the world. And just as no two fingerprints are identical, no two people's energetic rhythms are exactly the same. In most moments, this difference is invisible and causes no disruption. But in moments of stress, in moments of emotional intensity, in moments when both people need connection the most, that gap can suddenly feel like a canyon that neither person knows how to cross, no matter how desperately they want to reach the other side. When two people's energetic rhythms fall out of sync, something very specific begins to happen in the space between them. Communication that was once effortless starts to feel strained. Words that were meant with love begin to land with an unintended edge. Silences that were once comfortable become heavy with unspoken tension. One person reaches forward energetically, and the other, without knowing why, instinctively pulls back. One person needs closeness to feel safe, while the other needs space to regulate. One person processes emotion outwardly through expression, while the other processes it inwardly through silence and withdrawal. Neither of them is wrong. Neither of them is broken. They are simply operating on different energetic frequencies in that moment. And without the awareness to recognize what is happening, both of them will interpret the mismatch as a personal failure, as a lack of love, or as evidence that something is fundamentally wrong between them when in truth, nothing could be further from the truth. What makes energy mismatches particularly difficult to navigate is that they are almost entirely invisible to the untrained eye and completely resistant to logical resolution. You cannot point to an energy mismatch the way you can point to a hurtful comment or a broken promise. You cannot resolve it through argument or explanation. But you can feel it, in the way the air between you changes, in the way your body tenses during moments that should be simple, in the way you find yourself exhausted after interactions that should have left you feeling close. That exhaustion is real. That tension is real. And it is not a reflection of how much you love each other. It is a signal, a message from the body that something beneath the surface needs attention, needs care, needs a different kind of response than the mind alone is capable of providing. And that response, as it turns out, lives somewhere far more immediate and far more accessible than most people have ever been taught to look. There is something profound and almost counterintuitive that Donna and David Feinstein place at the very heart of their work. The idea that the fastest, most direct path back to emotional connection does not run through the mind at all. It does not begin with a perfect conversation, the right words carefully chosen, or even the most sincere apology. It begins with the body. This is a radical shift for most people, because we have been conditioned to believe that relationship problems are solved through communication, through talking it out, working it out, thinking it through. And while those things absolutely have their place, they are largely inaccessible when the nervous system is in a state of dysregulation. You cannot think your way back to connection when your body is still vibrating with threat. You cannot speak your way back to intimacy when every cell in your system is still braced for impact. The body must come first. This is not a metaphor. When a person is emotionally flooded, when the nervous system has been triggered and the stress response is fully activated, the physiological state of the body literally determines what is and is not possible in that moment. The heart rate is elevated. The muscles are tense. The breath is shallow and restricted. The body is consuming enormous amounts of energy simply managing the internal storm, leaving very little available for the kind of open, receptive, vulnerable communication that real intimacy requires. In this state, no amount of willpower, good intention, or love can fully bridge the gap between two people. The hardware, so to speak, is not configured for connection in that moment. And the only way to reconfigure it is to work directly with the body itself, to send it signals of safety through the one language it understands before any other. The language of physical experience. What Eden and Feinstein offer is not complicated, and that simplicity is itself part of its power. Something as quiet and intentional as slowing the breath, genuinely slowing it, lengthening the exhale, allowing the body to shift out of its emergency rhythm, begins to signal the nervous system that the threat has passed. Something as gentle as placing a hand on your own heart, or feeling the solid ground beneath your feet, begins to draw the body's scattered energy back into a state of coherence. And perhaps most powerfully of all, conscious, caring physical touch between partners. Not touch that demands anything, not touch that tries to resolve anything, but touch that simply says I am here and you are safe, has the capacity to move through all of the walls that words could never penetrate. The skin is the largest organ of the human body, and it is wired for exactly this kind of communication, speaking directly to the nervous system in ways the thinking mind simply cannot replicate. There is also something deeply equalizing about this approach that deserves to be fully acknowledged. Intellectual ability, emotional articulateness, the capacity to express oneself clearly, these are not evenly distributed gifts, and in relationships where one partner is significantly more verbal than the other, that imbalance can quietly create its own disconnection that neither person intended but both deeply feel. The body, however, knows no such hierarchy. A conscious breath is equally available to every human being alive. A moment of genuine, grounded physical presence asks nothing of a person's vocabulary or emotional intelligence. It asks only for willingness. And in that willingness, in that simple and humble return to the body, something begins to shift between two people that no argument ever could. Something softens, something opens, and something that was locked begins ever so quietly to come loose, leaving both people standing at the edge of something they have not felt in a long time, something that is not yet fully named, but is already being felt in the body before the mind has even caught up. There comes a point in every relationship where love alone is not enough to carry two people through. Not because the love isn't real, not because it isn't deep, but because love without awareness is like a light without direction. It fills the room, but it cannot show you where to walk. Awareness is what transforms love from a feeling into a practice, and it is what gives two people the capacity to navigate the inevitable storms without losing each other in the process. And patience is its quiet companion, asking you to hold space for your partner's process even when it is slow, even when it loops back on itself, even when progress feels invisible to the naked eye. Patience asks you to remember, in the moments when you feel most shut out, that the wall you are facing was not built overnight, and will not come down overnight either. Real healing of old wounds, real realignment of energetic patterns, real rewiring of a nervous system shaped by years of survival, these things move at the pace of trust, not the pace of urgency. Every time you choose curiosity over criticism, every time you choose presence over pressure, you are laying down another stone on the path that leads both of you back to each other. And those small, quiet choices, made consistently, made humbly, made even on the days when everything in you wants to give up, are not small at all. What Donna Eden and David Feinstein ultimately leave us with is not a technique or a formula, but a profound reorientation of how we understand the people we love most. Every moment of disconnection carries within it an invitation to go deeper, to look closer, and to love more wisely than before. The person who feels impossible to reach is not lost. They are waiting, beneath all the layers of protection and pain, for someone patient enough, aware enough, and grounded enough to stay. And the greet,